Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the council meeting of March 11th. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock and with the adoption of the agenda. There is an addition under in camera 18.7 committee group discussion. Any others?
Madam Mayor, administration has no additions.
Okay, thank you. Could I have someone move the Councillor Jessamine? So is there any, I can't answer these questions. All in favor? Staff Sergeant Deveron is not here.
No, he's off on training. He was hoping to have somebody here tonight, but it doesn't look like they were able to make it.
Okay. So we'd like to welcome Stu Palmer from the Northwest Territories and Melissa. Okay, thank you. It's nice to see you again. Welcome to our council.
Thank you, Mayor McAteer. Can
you see us?
Yes, we can see you. You have great zooming where somebody is speaking and it's moving too. So that's a step above what we have at the Canadian Red Cross sometimes. So
we have a cheap owl for sale.
Noted. Thank you very much for having us.
So you can proceed with your presentation. If you're unaware, we met at Growing the North, and I asked her to give a presentation of what the Northwest Territories was going through, and maybe how we could help each other out.
Excellent. So, so thank you, Mayor McAteer. My name is Stu Parmar, and I am the Vice President for the Canadian Red Cross for Alberta and the Northwest Territories. So both the Northwest Territories and Alberta. I am coming to you from Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton. I am new in my role and have been in this role for 6 months. I am a pharmacist by trade, so I graduated 20 years ago, and I have the experience of working in the provincial government and in private industry, and of course working in community and hospital pharmacy in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I am joined today by Melissa Fougere, who is the Director of Operations for Emergency Management for Alberta and Northwest Territories. And I had the pleasure of meeting Mayor McAteer during the Growing the North conference in Grande Prairie a few weeks ago. And so, you know, the Canadian Red Cross in the past decade has made quite a large shift. We used to be 80% international operations and 20% domestic. Fast forward to today's world, and we're actually about 80% domestic in Canada and 20% in international. And it's not because international has decreased, it's because what we're seeing for the event seasons in Canada are changing. What we used to see is a large-scale event every 4 to 5 years, and we would see an event season that was short, from March to September. Then we would go into planning, and then we would have another event season. What we see now is an event season that doesn't end, and that we see large-scale events every year. And so when I was talking to Mayor McAteer in Grande Prairie, was learning that high level is the gateway to the north. So most of the Northwest Territories evacuations would have gone through high level, as well as the Canadian Red Cross has been supporting, but more supporting in a vendor capacity. And so we would be able to bring cots or bring supplies. And what I've heard in the conversations over the last 6 months with High Level, City of Edmonton, Grande Prairie, Northwest Territories is that building relationships during an emergency is not the easiest way to do that. And so the first step of that is to be here today to talk about what the Canadian Red Cross can do. And I understand that what we at the Canadian Red Cross, like I said, have provided services in the past, and it hasn't always been easy. Just understanding what the capacity of the Canadian Red Cross is and the capacity of the emergency management, as well as looping in Indigenous governments, provincial governments, and sometimes territorial governments and federal governments at times. And so the Canadian Red Cross is really looking to be a convener of these. I do have a presentation, but I didn't submit it in before. So should I just speak to the presentation and send it after, or could I share my screen?
You can share your screen.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. I am not the most technology savvy person. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So I just wanted to start the proposed agenda by having some reflections and opportunities to strengthen our work together, then go into shared challenges, explain a little bit about our work in Canada, and then answer any questions that Council may have and City Administration. So this is a very busy slide, and it's one that talks about how we identified that stocks and supplies were not received as fast as high level wished during the 2023 event season. And so we were proposing the following in advance of a 2024 event season, that we could present the types, the availabilities and locations of stocks and supplies are one of our where we actually hold some of our stocks are in Peace County, and as well as Edmonton and Calgary. So we actually have quite a few stocks and supplies in Alberta. And then we could talk later about how High Level could describe the surge support that is required and figure out together how we could deploy some of that stock as for the 2024 event season. We're also offering to listen to any reflections or opportunities of lessons learned from 2023 wildfire season. We really think that we could what the Canadian Red Cross does is we are an auxiliary to government. So we wouldn't want to take over any emergency operations. We're here to help fill in the gaps as we go along. So whether that be in emergency social services and supports, we can really help. We can really help in emergency settings before and after as well, with the municipality leading. And so with the high impact fire season that's anticipated, we really want to figure out what High Level wants and needs for services, supports, and the role that we can play in advance of the event season, so that we can actually have the personnel, the stocks, and the supplies ready to support. Just talk about rising risks in Canada. Flooding remains really a preeminent risk to Albertans, wildfires especially with the holdover fires, especially in northern Alberta and the Boreal Forest Zone. We saw this year that we're having prolonged drought, so we're having less precipitation than normal. We're also having heat wave events where we've had above seasonal temperatures, and so that's just a rising risk in Canada, and rising risk to Albertans as well. We're also seeing that there's really a low level of individual and community preparedness, and it's very different across all of Canada. In Alberta, we know that there are some areas that are more prepared than others, and so what the Canadian Red Cross really wants to do is looking at filling in those gaps of how we could help. Because a lot of the times what we've seen is that sometimes municipalities don't actually have the capacity or the funding to have emergency management. I know that's not in high level, but there is a lot of it that's happening on the side of people's desks, and so we really just want to have the conversations of where we could help and understand, the current capacity to respond to major and catastrophic events, especially in Indigenous communities where the Canadian Red Cross has a very high focus. We also have, the information and data in emergencies is getting more and more mature as we go along. And just there's so many actors in this space now. We want to make sure that everybody is coordinated before the emergency as well as after. We're also starting to see a heightened expectations of Canadians. So we're starting to see a bit of compassion fatigue, and insurance coverage is also changing for high risk areas. And so we're starting to see that some insurance companies are looking at making areas that are uninsurable, and that's a really big challenge. Our work in Canada, this is a very, very busy slide. It really goes to show about how many operations we have and how different our operations are from coast to coast to coast. You'll see in the West, in British Columbia and Alberta, we do have quite a bit of wildfire. We are looking at a lot of wildfires for active responses. In Alberta, we also have up north, we have nurses and doctors that we can deploy for health human resources when there are towns that are lacking in physicians and nursing support. We also have Ukrainian arrivals in Manitoba, and then we have asylum seekers in Ontario, all the way from to Hurricane Fiona and PEI in 2022. So this is just goes to show kind of the operations that the 20% to the 80% for domestic operations. And this map changes pretty much week to week. I really want to speak about how we are really, I talked about how Indigenous communities are a really core pillar for the Canadian Red Cross as a whole in Canada, and specifically in Alberta as well. We do have funding from ISK and the First Nations Inuit Health Branch. We have a help desk resource for Indigenous community leadership that they can call anytime, and we can help coordinate some services there. We are looking at continuing the consultations in Alberta with Indigenous leadership and councils to talk to them as well about how we could help, how we could fill the gap. This talks about the capacity at the Canadian Red Cross from really a community-based approach. And so all the way in emergency management, from preparedness, risk reduction, and climate adaptation to relief, which is during the emergencies and after the emergencies, and then recovery and resilience. So we are there after all the media has left as well to help rebuild communities with financial assistance should there be appeal dollars or matching grants from the provincial or federal government. This is our service offerings, and to be honest, when I first joined the Canadian Red Cross, 76 pages of offerings at the Canadian Red Cross, and so this is a very high level of what we can. At the same time, like I said, we are auxiliary to government. So if there is a gap in what the governments need, we can help build that as well together in partnership. So we do emergency social services such as shelter and lodging, registration and needs assessments. We have our own registration system that also doubles as financial assistance, so we're able to use the system to push out financial assistance. We support small businesses and not-for-profits, public health and emergency health services, we support the support that we give to Indigenous populations is we want to make sure that it is culturally sensitive and appropriate, and then we also do mass financial assistance. And so during the Fort McMurray wildfires, we were able to do mass financial assistance of $50 million in one day. So that was So we are able to, we have the systems and capacity to do that. We also have mental health and psychosocial supports. We have specialists on staff, and we also have volunteers as well. And we work in an area for risk reduction and resilience to make sure that we're building and creating safe environments. This just talks about the percentage of our services in our current operation. You'll see that about 28% or a quarter is for relief, so shelter, food, and other essential services. You'll see that the majority of our work is around case management and granting, such as we currently have a mitigation program for communities that have been affected or were on alert or evacuation. There are grants up to, for households, up to $3,000 to help fire smart their house, and as well as to provide some funding to make sure that we are ready for 2024. And then we also, like I said, we have about 26% in international response and programming.
So, could you just repeat that?
Yeah. So
we had talked about, so.
Yeah. So this
mitigation.
is the mitigation program, and I don't actually have a slide on that. The mitigation program is a program that is launched out of our appeals funds for the 2023 wildfire. And so it is a recovery program. So any community that was on evacuation alert or was evacuated, every household that is in that community could apply. There's two parts to the grant. So the first one is $1,500, and it's it's about you can cleaning the debris around your house. Well, now it's winter, but during winter, when winter is gone, we see a lot of houses that have very flammable materials outside of their house. So the grant can provide funding for you to hire a contractor or to do the work yourself. And there is a list of eligible items for that. There is another $1,500 that if you were to spend money on, let's say, changing your windows or making some of your household more resilient during the fire, then you could also apply for that other $1,500, so up to $3,000. If your house had significant loss, then you could even go to another program, which is our case management program, where we offer one-time supports and case management to say, what is it that you would need to build and be more resilient in the recovery? And so you could also apply to that, and we could help with some of the wraparound services, so help with the insurance and help with providing some information during, after the emergency.
So this wouldn't be applicable to high level who was not evacuated on alert, but surrounded by fires?
So was high level not on alert or evacuation?
No.
No. Okay. So that program, you're right, Mayor, it would not be applicable to high level.
Okay, but it's information that we can pass on to communities here that were evacuated.
Yes, and you are a host community, correct, Mayor?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So currently our programming does not include host areas. We are looking at expanding our programming with the current provincial funds that have been given to us, and so we could, once we've had the conversation with the provincial government, there is a potential to expand the programming. So I will just keep that as a note. Does that sound like a program that would be useful for high level?
Yeah, it probably would be, since we've been a host since 2003.
Okay, yeah, that's great to know. Okay, perfect. So I'll take that back, and if there are opportunities for us to expand that to host, I will definitely let you let council and you, Mayor McAteer, know right away on that.
Thank you.
And so the last thing that we'll talk about is just how the Canadian Red Cross can be engaged. What we're looking at right now is looking at municipal agreements that we can work through to understand what the services that are needed from municipalities such as High Level, and looking for those services and expectations for, you know, what materials are you looking for, where can we help, and having those agreements signed before an emergency or crisis. And this document would allow, you know, the services that we would provide when the event occurs, and the eligible costing terms. We have quite a bit of different funding modalities at the Canadian Red Cross. So, you know, we sign agreements, and if an appeal is triggered, then some of the funding modality can come from the donations, and some of that could come from, you know, depending on who is declaring the state of emergency. We would be able to pull together all of the stakeholders in that to figure out what the funding could look like. That is really what we prefer. The municipal agreement is a bit of a partnership. So it allows us to bring our volunteers together to do training with the municipalities so that both of our teams are working together before the emergency occurs. And it really is more of a partnership than a vendor agreement. The second type is a just-in-time service arrangement that is negotiated. This is typically negotiated quickly after an emergency is declared, and it's signed just when the event occurs. And so we like to try and avoid the just-in-time agreements and arrangements because there are, a lot of the time, as the City of Edmonton has described it to me, it's signing an agreement on Friday night at 9:30 when the emergency is happening. And so it's easier for us to sign it beforehand to understand what the expectations are of both parties and how we are helping the municipality moving through an event. And so then there are also, we can provide services for risk reduction and preparedness. Those can be signed at any time, and we would propose scopes of work ranging from community readiness plans, exercises, training, community supports, and these are supports that are services that are contracted for and funded. So that was it for my quick presentation, and I'll stop sharing. And I think, I don't know if this is the right time, Mayor, but I believe if there is any feedback for us from the 2023 wildfires or before, we're really open to hearing it. I think what we are looking to do is really create stronger relationships with leadership, and to make sure that we can be the partner if needed before the emergency, during the emergency, or after the emergency. I think it has been stated to myself that we have had leadership here where we've taken over, and that's not really the leadership that Melissa and I are bringing to the table here. It's really understanding what the needs are and how can we help with who we have. We have 6,000 volunteers across Canada. We can deploy people from outside as well if needed, and we can help surge if High Level needs us to. So I would thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, and we can put you in contact with the expert here. In essence of time tonight, we have a busy agenda. She would be able to tell you, everything about pre and post and during, and give you some good information about what is missing and how long it takes. In an emergency, like we don't have 3 days, we need it now, sort of stuff, and so yeah, we CAO can put you in contact with her and you can discuss that with her.
And thank you. I did forget to mention that we can ship same day, next day. So that is something that we will definitely speak to the CAO and administration about, and just to ensure those timelines are reiterated throughout. So I thank you, Mayor McAteer, and I thank you to the council.
I would just like to introduce you to Jenna Clark, who has been here for a long time assisting us through all the evacuations. Melissa, she is certainly a wealth of information, and we trust that you could get us on the same track.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, Madam Mayor, that this is very timely because we're right in the middle of updating both our emergency response plan and our emergency social services plan, so.
Thank you. Councillor Welke has a question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Councillor Welke here, and pharmacist in the community. Thought I'd mention that.
I told you.
Yay! And sorry if I missed this, but when you were talking about the mitigation grants available to residents, and if we're communicating this to people in our region, does that include the Indigenous communities as well? People that live on federal jurisdiction? Yeah? Okay. And they would apply as individuals?
Yes, that's correct. They would apply as households. And that the house doesn't have to be owned by themselves. They would apply as households.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had one more question about volunteers, like mental health. We have a difficult time getting mental health workers up here at the best. Is that something that Red Cross actually will supply?
Melissa, I'll let you take this one.
I was going to say, would you like me to speak to that? So, yes, Mayor, we do have a couple different types of, so we have our safety and well-being volunteers who really provide that frontline initial recognition that somebody might be in distress, and they can refer them to the appropriate clinical providers. We do have our mental health and psychosocial team who are registered workers. Some are registered social workers, psychologists, whatever. We don't actually do clinical work, but we can do the psychological first aid piece and the supportive conversations until that critical crisis piece is able to be taken over by the appropriate leader in the community, or that the situation is de-escalated. So that is something that we've provided in many different areas, and happy to chat more about.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, where are you, out of Yellowknife or Hay River or Edmonton?
I am actually in Leduc, Mayor. So not far. I'm in Leduc, right close to the airport. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Councillor Jessamine has a question.
I'll make it real quick. I know the mayor's want us to move on, but just a question regarding the mitigation strategies, and really interesting because up here we had a number of communities that were negatively impacted, and they're out in remote areas, and part of my responsibility within the government of Alberta is looking after wildfire, fire smart mitigation strategies within communities. And the question was, do you ever work with government branches to kind of drive this? Because it can be a daunting exercise, and we do it on a regular basis. But one of the problems there is our funding. So I think this would be an amazing tool that we could use going forward.
Councillor, we quite often will partner with the government of Alberta, and we work really closely. We have a memorandum of understanding with Fire Smart Canada, and then the Alberta branch of that works with Fire Smart. We continuously work with them. And then what it is it's really about the mitigation measures and the programming so that people become self-sufficient, so that fire doesn't actually have to come in and do those mitigation measures. We'll go through an assessment with them, provide materials for them, do follow-up with them, and that's all through our risk reduction program. But we have funded in the past lots of the government components to Fire Smart. Fort McMurray's Fire Smart program grew as big as it did after the fires, when we did use the appeal to support that.
Excellent, thank you.
Well, can you appeal to get high level in that fire smart? We were evacuated like 4 years ago.
We have noted it. We definitely have noted it, Mayor, and we will definitely bring that back. And honestly, that's what makes people very excited is when we talk about the program. It really is enforcing the learnings from the Fire Smart. And so, same thing with Grand Prairie. When I spoke to them, they said if we could have this program, it would be amazing because they actually pay for somebody to come out and to look at the Fire Smart, and then our program would be one step above it to say, well, here's the grant for you to actually do the work. Right. And so we all know that $1 in preparedness really helps later in, in terms of the actual operation. So we will definitely take that back because I think that is a very popular program we're seeing.
All right, is there any more questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, ladies, and I look forward to seeing you again. Well, hopefully not in a crisis situation. But if Jenna is coming back with a presentation for us or something. So
thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councils. And we'll follow up with Jenna. Thank you for the introduction.
Have a nice evening.
All right, do you have the regular council meeting minutes? Could I have someone move to accept if they are acceptable? Councillor Jessamine, all in favor? Carried. Our CMP weren't here. I don't have a report because I was away. Hopefully, I will have one for next time.
Do we move the delegation businesses?
Yeah, we're going to do that right now. But it wasn't on here. So we're going to move 7.2, or the 5.2, we'll move to 7.2. Could I have someone accept the report for information, please?
I can do that.
Councillor Welke, all in favor? Carried. So moving on to 9.1, committees of council. Deputy Mayor.
On March 5th, I attended the presentation from Alberta Emergency Management. It was sort of a recap of 2023 and projections for 2024. There was one sort of positive note coming out of that. They look at their long-term weather trends with meteorologists, and supposedly we are quickly moving from El Nino into a neutral phase over a relatively short period of time. The last 3 times that happened in 1998, 2010, and 2016. The overall trends in Alberta for April, May, and June were for above average precipitation, some areas more than others. So here's hoping that maybe we'll get some precipitation this spring. Right after that, we're going into La Nina, so maybe next winter will be colder. Then on Friday, I was at the Northern Alberta Elected Leaders meeting. As part of his presentation, Minister Williams made reference to the possibility that there may be a nuclear power plant being situated within our region. I got the impression it would be closer to Peace River, but like a $20 billion project, so that's all I have.
Where are they going to get the water?
Out of the Peace River. Provided BC lets it through the Site C dam, it's not yet full.
All right, thank you. Questions? None. Councillor Anderson.
On February 28th, I attended the Golden Range Society's AGM. They had a decent turnout for their meeting, and nothing changed on the board. On February 29th, I attended the Transportation Society's meeting. There again, they're still in need of drivers. They're down basically back to one. We'll maybe get up to two, but there's been some health issues with some of the drivers, so they're always looking for drivers. The handy van was very busy in February, so. February 29th as well, the library board meeting, which I think went quite well. And then on March 8th, the CEC Northern Lakes College, meeting.
Any questions? Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Jessamine?
March 8th, I met with the Tall Cree First Nation community, the CAO, along with our child advocacy manager, Julie Clausen, to review some of the programs that we have with them and to inform them that we've received additional funding for an additional worker within the center, so we're pretty excited about that for 2 years of funding. So it'll be a family advocate position. So that's exciting as we move forward, and just continuing on a bit of a campaign to spread the message among the region with our partners, and they were first on the list was Tall Cree, so and we're hopefully will receive some funding from them. But, yeah, that's it for
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, no, great.
Any questions? Thank you, Councillor Jessamine. Councillor Lambert?
I have no meetings to report.
Thank you. Councillor LeBrion?
I just have the one meeting for the high-level library board on February 29th that I attended. Yep, it was a great meeting, but I just wanted to point out our Barbie Day that happened on March 9th and how big of a success it looked to be. I was unable to attend, but I just wanted to say good job to everybody that was involved and all of our sponsors to help make it happen. So, you know, keep an eye out for what events are coming in the future, and hopefully we can keep rolling with it.
I thought you'd be Ken.
I was hockey Ken this weekend.
It looked like it, I saw the pictures, it looked like it was a lot of fun.
Madam Mayor, just to add to that, there was over 160 children participated in that day.
Really?
Yep.
That's exciting. All right, Councillor Welke.
On February 29th, I attended a film and TV task force meeting. In attendance at that meeting were Director Schmidt for Emergency Services discussion and CAO McCaskill was there as well. And we just further hashed out, I guess, mostly the safety issues involved with events of this type. You know, if that industry comes to town, and what that looks like from, I guess, a liability and safety perspective from the municipality to ensure that, you know, what could, you know, events that could potentially have dangerous situations, you know, are mitigated properly, and that we have policy and procedure in place. We also talked about how often emergency services are employed or hired for this industry as well, in a couple of capacities, whether they're on site for specific safety reasons, because a crew, you know, doesn't come with their own safety people, or they're quite often asked to be present in production. So there's, you know, there's actually companies in the more populated areas like safety and firefighting companies that are, you know, dedicated to this industry. So it's just interesting that, you know, the need and up here with our capacity, we, you know, should be able to handle most situations should, you know, an event or permit need to be issued for this. The only thing we're not really at capacity for would be security issues. So, you know, those are the types of things we discussed. And then kind of further integrating that into a pipeline of easy permitting where we could establish safety plans up front to see what the needs are for, you know, production if it was here. So we're moving forward, and we should have, you know, something to bring to council, you know, in the near future on, you know, what policy would look like for, you know, dealing with this industry. So, and the only other note I have, which we will talk about later, in the meeting is My time on the board of Community Futures has come to its limit. They have I believe it's CEO Mikowski, you could clarify, it's a three-term limit?
Three-year term limit.
Three-year term limit. So I'm actually at my 9 years on that board. I was with them before I was even with the town. So that's where, you know, I would like to just have a discussion later on about, I guess, reappointing another. I know we have an alternate, but, Councillor Lieberon is an extremely busy, individual as well. So, you know, if we can just look at those things, later on in the meeting. And that's all I have to report.
Any questions? Thank you, Councillor Welke. Could I have someone move council reports, please? Councillor Lieberon, all in favor? Carried. Administrative reports, action list, questions.
Madam Mayor, I did have just one thing I wanted to add. The very last item on that jurisdictional boundaries issue. We have encountered significant issues in determining the boundaries of the other jurisdiction. So we're continuing to work on that. That's why it's not on the agenda today.
Okay. Could I have someone move that, please? Question, Councillor Welke.
Has the meeting for the fire service agreement with Deneta occurred?
Actually, they were looking at Wednesday, if it's possible. I sent you a text. We've actually, the new EDO has been quite open to trying to get that meeting, but he's having coordination issues as well, so.
Who's
we are working
the new EDO?
Harold Waskall. He was not sure of Councillor Bolio's availability either. I'll touch base with him tomorrow and see where he's at.
What was the tentative date?
Wednesday.
Of this week? Okay. I'm also, attending the Ready-Made Business Conference as well, but I can be fairly flexible, so I could probably make that meeting.
Okay, I'll check with Mr. Waskall tomorrow. If he hasn't been able to get a hold of Councillor Bolio, it probably won't be this week.
Okay. I am away next week.
I'm here next week.
Oh, okay, okay.
I will include both councillors in the communications.
Any other questions on the action list? Could I have someone move it, please? Deputy Mayor, all in favor? Carried. Upcoming events. We need a sign.
An event sign?
Yes. No, we need a sign with all the community stuff going on.
I'll move the events.
Councillor Anderson, all in favor? Carried. Monthly report. Any questions to council? Deputy Mayor?
Under the water and wastewater, do we really have overdue annual reports from 2021 and 2022?
Yes, and they have all been cleaned up and submitted.
Does the province not follow up on those? Like it's...
This was the first time I was in on the email, but when they reached out, we did get those done as expediently as possible, and it was a very good learning experience for Mr. Lazat.
Thank you.
Yep. Jessamine, Councillor?
It was a question for, Mr. McCaskill, the website, our website, are we getting it worked on? There was comments in there that, there's some updates on it.
I know Mr. Schnarr doesn't have a microphone, but he's actively working with our web host, and they're rebuilding the pages and trying to make it a little more user-friendly, as well as making it a little more appealing visually as well. So it is in work. We can provide an update at a future meeting.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions on reports? Could I have someone move it then? Councillor Lebrion, all in favor? Carried. Old business. Briefing note from Canada Mortgage and Housing.
Madam Mayor, that's just to bring council up to speed on our current situation with that CMHC grant through their Housing Accelerator Fund. We have reached out to the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation to have a discussion, and we have not had a date or time set. I included a couple of articles in there. It appears so far that Banff is one of the few communities in Alberta that have received funding. And I received a text from Ms. Gavin on the weekend that Grand Prairie, Red Deer, and Lethbridge have also been refused. So none of the small cities in Alberta have received funding.
Where we need it most.
Yeah. So after the meeting with CMHC, we'll bring it back to council. We may want to reach out to Mr. Workington.
Can we receive this for information, please, council? Yes. Councillor Anderson, all in favor? Carried. New business. (13.1) Request for decision for housing.
Madam Mayor, Director Schmidt sends his apologies. He's in the city for meetings over the next few days. But he did put forward the briefing note here. It's fairly self-explanatory. We're still waiting on the houses that we're dealing with the province. The new due dates are July, so we don't expect to see them at all this year. So we're looking for alternative means to house the summer staff that council has approved us to hire for the fire department.
I would like to say that normally when people move here, don't they find their own housing?
Most of our staff are required to do so. These are short-term staff. They're on 4-month contracts, and all of them are students. So they have no financial means at the time of their hiring. Or, sorry, shouldn't prejudge them, but I'm going to assume if they're like the rest of us, they have no financial means.
I don't agree with the town being on the hook for anything. I mean, if he sourced these houses, these are the rents, I would suggest that if we think that somebody's going to leave halfway through the season, then we should charge more than what the rent is. I think we should be above cost recovery, because the council, the taxpayer should not be on the hook for somebody's rent. My opinion. And I don't think we should be providing furnishing these places.
The furniture, I believe, in the briefing note is being donated by members.
Well, it
in most cases.
$2,000.
He put in a placeholder budget as part of it, just in case some things couldn't be sourced, and then all of this would move over to the new housing once it's acquired.
Councillor Welke.
I agree with the initiative in principle, and cost recovery is good. I'm not sure what you mean that they don't have the financial means. I think that they literally, there's a housing crisis and we don't have, you know, it's hard enough as it is to just come up here and find a place. I think considering the potential for the emergencies this summer, that we should be doing something like this. I would hope that there were provisions so in place that if somebody were to leave, that maybe they pay their rent for the time that they were supposed to. You know, that sort of thing. Like, I agree, you know, cost recovery I think is fine. If we were on the hook for something, I agree with the mayor that, you know, that could be problematic, but I think we need to do something like this.
Deputy Mayor.
Oh, I agree with Councillor Welke. I think if we're hoping to get these seasonal positions staff that we have to provide accommodation. There is zero vacancy. I know we talk about, services from CN and places like that. I know for a fact that, CN reallocated one position that was supposed to come here to Peace River because the person couldn't find any place to live. And I agree, it should just be on a cost recovery basis.
Councillor Jessman?
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, we, within the government, within the area here, we bring in over 105 seasonal wage staff, and we house every one of them. And all their costs are covered. I mean, we all have realized the situation that we've been in the last few years with disasters, and going forward, I don't think there's going to be any relief from that. And these positions are critical, and it's difficult to get people to come to these remote communities. It's expensive for them to come here, so I support that. I was going to say something else, but
You house them in tents, so.
no, they're all in trailers, and we feed them too. But the money that the town brought in from the province last year for WUI support was substantial, so I think that the people of High Level could cover this cost.
Councillor Anderson?
If we're, as the mayor said, worried that the taxpayers should be on the hook for half a rental or whatever, you could always put in their contract that if they leave early, they're subject to the rent that they would have normally paid on their term. So that could be brought, forward right off the hop, right? And then it'd be cost recovery then.
Until the position was replaced.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there needs to be some incentive to make them stay. I don't think we should have to pay if they leave early.
But that could be in their contract right off the.
But it's in the report as a risk for the town. That's why I bring up the fact that it should be above tax recovery, or cost recovery. And I don't doubt that, there's no rental property. I agree that we're under risk of fire, and we have not been able to attract people from our own community. So, that being said, we're working on 2 units. Have we paid for them? I hope not.
They're waiting your decision, Madam Mayor.
Because it looks like, we're not gonna get those. They're not gonna be there for us, so. Anyways, somebody wanna make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
What motion?
Their recommendation, one
It says on a cost recovery basis. I disagree with that, so.
So that would include though, that provision that they,
Doesn't say that.
but that's cost recovery. I mean, that could be worked in there, so.
We'll work on something. The other thing, sorry, not to interrupt council's discussion, is we could also raise the rent a little bit, and that would give a buffer if we've got some vacancies. $100 a month would cover any of that potential cost.
But if they come here in the first month and leave like in month 1, that's not going to cover the cost.
We have 44 applicants for the 4 positions. We'll have a bit of a queue if they leave that early. If they leave later in the season, that might be more difficult.
So I would like to see something written into the contract, is my personal.
plus the money we make off of what they're going to be working with, well covered losses.
We're gonna make off them working for the town fire
We're
department?
going to be submitting invoices to the government of Alberta for them.
Yeah, if.
Pardon me?
They're not WUI, they're seasonal firefighters for the town of High Level.
Oh, they won't be going out on WUI.
No.
No, but they'll be covering the people who are going out for WUI, yes.
So,
And actually, one individual is a WUI fill-in because of a paternity leave.
But they're covering the firefighters for high level.
Yes, who would be earning revenue for the town on their deployments.
You made a motion. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Request for decision for the library.
Madam Mayor, I will have Municipal Clerk Waters address that issue for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So on February 29th, the High Level Library Board met and they reviewed the expressions of interest from the community to join the board. There were 4 expressions of interest, and all 4 candidates are being recommended by the Library Board for appointment if Council so wishes.
So what are the terms of reference for the library? Because these are all town employees.
Yes, that's usually, I can't remember if it's the Libraries Act or regulation. It does not stipulate that a town employee cannot be on the board. It does stipulate, however, that a library employee cannot be on the board.
So the library board is not town.
It's a separate, Madam Mayor, it's a separate entity. It's primarily funded by this council, but it is a separate legal entity.
Okay. Councillor Welke.
I would have to ask that I step out for this decision.
Madam Mayor, just clarification, are the members paid on the library board? Then
Well, they're not.
then there's no fiduciary responsibility.
Okay.
There's no conflict.
Okay, yep, oh, Deputy Mayor.
I'll move the recommendation.
All in favor? Carried. Request for decision for ratification of the round dance funding.
Madam Mayor, I'll ask the municipal clerk to address that issue as well.
Good evening again. So on February, I'm trying to remember the date here, I believe it was the 26th? It was before that. Administration was directed to go ahead and use our donation policy to sponsor the round dance requested by Keith Labacan. In addition to that, there were swim passes given. The minute the swim passes were given, we went over that amount, which was $300. The donation was for $332.50. So we just need a motion from council for this.
I was wondering where the $32.50 came from.
That was 10 youth swim passes.
Someone want to make a motion? Oh, Deputy Mayor, all in favor? Carried. Correspondence for action.
Madam Mayor, you forwarded the accreditation letter that Mr. Burnell received for Air Medical Emergency Services. We just put this on for action to see if council wanted to forward a letter or a card of congratulations.
Council?
I'm okay with it.
So he did receive the highest accreditation, I think, because he's been a member of our community and a business in our community and a good partner. I think it would be becoming of us to send him a card thanking him for his service. Seems that he used to be in the Army too. Do you want to make that motion?
I can make that motion to send a token of appreciation for Gord Burnell and Air Medical from the town of High Level.
All in favor? Carried. Anything from correspondence for information that you would like to discuss? Could I have someone accept for information then? Councillor Lebrion, all in favor? Carried. So thank you very much for attending our meeting. Council will now go into closed session. Could I have someone move us into closed session, please? Councillor Lambert, all in favor? Carried.